So.
Was I talking to the microphone when I said that? I hope you had a nice potty break. The VIP cocktail at 5 o'clock indeed, though. Do we know where that is?
Where is it? So we have maps at the table if you're not sure. Maps at the check-in table. But if you know this is east, this is the ocean, so you need to go north through the hallway past where the elevators are, and it'll be right on the right-hand side.
Okay, so go.
It looks like a little private bar area. It's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And Lala will be playing music there tonight, which I'm really excited about. And then after that is John Vivanco and then Skywatch. Yeah, actually, Lala's going to be playing more music before John comes on. She's going to be up here playing a few songs, I guess. And then John and then Skywatch, yeah. So up next we have Matthew Mornian. He's Matthew Mornian. He is a psychic reader, multi-dimensional healer, professional bullshitter. So if you guys know Matthew, he's doing some really incredible work. I personally had a session with him. It's spot on. He's the real deal.
Yeah, it's kind of scary sometimes. And you know the session's good whenever you get all information that you don't want to hear.
Like when you're terrified and you're like,
wait a minute, now I have work to do. So without further ado, Matthew, come on up. I think they're going to play a quick video for the live stream. So you got about 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Oh, so we're good? Okay. All right. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived. Oh, Lord. It's been a very long, 2 years, 1 year, 1 month. My concept of time is really bad, so who knows how long we've been in this strange, bizarre charade, this AI-infested timeline of bizarreness, and yet also lots of magic, tons of magic. In fact, if you want to get technical, I'm going to be really honest with everyone here. Some of you guys have heard me say this before. This is the most amazing time we could have ever chosen to incarnate as humans on this planet. There is no greater time. And so we're going to start out today by literally congratulating you guys, no matter what has happened in your life, through all the traumas, through all the victories, through all the abuses, through all the craziness, through all the injuries, through all the emotions. Somehow you persisted, you survived, you made it through this lifetime here on Earth. Maybe your mom or your dad or you're an accountant, or maybe you're one of the members of the 3-letter agencies that have also joined us here. And so wherever you are, I honestly say thank you. Thank you for finding us. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for choosing to be in this strange room, even though most of us don't know why we're here yet, right? I think that's kind of the big thing, as what we would call star seeds or, wanderers, whatever new age terminology you want to add to it. We're all trying to figure out what we're doing here. Why did we come here? Why were we born? Why did I choose those parents? Why did I choose this time, right? Why did I choose this time to be alive? And that's because we came here with a very, very important mission. And it's very real. In fact, it's been one of the most real aspects of my entire life. And so for some of you guys that have seen me online, you'll probably know I'm what we would call a tangential speaker. I'll kind of ramble on and on. So I do have some slides here today that are going to kind of help me stay in line. And so we're going to be reading from some of that. We're also going to probably be diverting wildly into all kinds of strange things. But starting out, Literally, our mission here today is to generate awareness of the multidimensional intuitive healing abilities inherent within each and every person in this room. We're also going to be assisting in the ongoing evolution of who and why we chose to become, or rather, why we chose to come into this strange realm, why we chose to come into these human bodies. We did choose our bodies, believe it or not. Next time you look at yourself in the mirror, you literally chose this container. I know for some of us that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a literal truth. And when we leave this physical lifetime, we're going to get all kinds of really fun realizations about who we thought we were and what we were doing. And granted, I have not officially passed away on the earth plane yet, but I'm pretty sure we get a really fun review process. There might even be a little bit of a revealing for some of us here, but this is also another literal truth. Inside every single person exists the soul of a master healer, a great mystic, a magician. Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a guide, maybe it's a shaman, maybe it's a journalist. We don't know what it is, but the reality is we came in here with a very specific set of goals, tools, missions. And today, hopefully, my honest prayer for everyone that's here is we're going to be getting a little bit closer to understanding maybe what that is or what we need to do, the certain steps that we need to take in order to create the timeline that we're all trying to see right now. Because if you haven't noticed, things didn't necessarily go as planned. Or did they? So if you're like me, you've been enjoying the wild charade and this bizarre kind of scene and movie that we all get to watch, and you'll be wondering where you fit in. What's your job? What did you sign up for? And so I also have to say this. Some of the things you may hear here today may not make sense, or they may contrast, in some cases, rather heavily with your pre-programmed worldview of what you think is happening right now. No matter what you believe or what you've signed up for, please understand this is information that has been given to me by the Multidimensional Higher Self Council that I've been working with for the past few years. And I think if there's one thing we need to realize, we are all figuring this out together. There's no one final authority on the nature of multidimensional energy or healing or extraterrestrial contact or timeline shifting or even that wild in this body at this time. And if you've made it here today, it's because you have a role to play in this strange journey, in this strange soul group. And so here we are. This is always the funnest part. I don't get to talk about this too much. I don't do that many events. Most of them ignore me, let's be real. But every now and then I talk about the strange story and how I got here and what happened to me. And honestly, you guys, if you would have saw me right here, you know it. So whoever that is in this room, that's who this is for. Because if you would have told me, turns out you're going to be sitting all day talking with people on Zoom all over the world, trying to understand their exercise I was very stagnated. I didn't want to go back to work. I had to go see some people and get people into housing, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And I sat down on a little chair just like that, and this woman put her hands on my head, and a few moments later, I went back to work, and I could feel this ring around my head. It was sort of like I was wearing a hat. It was like the strange thing on my head, and within 30 days, my entire life changed. Literally everything about me began to change. It's one of the most bewildering and difficult experiences I've ever had in this body and in this life, and I literally thought I was going crazy. What I understand now is that I experienced a very rapid crown chakra opening that facilitated an awakening process in which I experienced what we call a soul unbraiding event. For some of you guys, it's going to be a very difficult thing to unpack, but what it essentially means is that another version of myself entered this body. Always a fun thing to talk about in public, right? It is one of the facts of our existence as humans. There are stages in this life in which another version of you will quite literally activate. And I believe that my journey here as a human is to represent the process of the walk-in or the soul unbraiding, because prior to 2012, I was an utterly different person. Some people out there that know me on Facebook can go read through my photos and you will see a different person, quite literally. I had a massive change. And so it's been a very long journey for me, but it culminated in about 2017 with what I call a set of adult onset extraterrestrial experiences in which after going through lots of activations and all kinds of wild stuff, I began to encounter strange beings. Very large lion beings appeared in the sky above my house. All kinds of strange Pleiadian beings, things that showed up in my field of view in the corners of my eyes. They started telling me all kinds of interesting things about how I had a mission, about how there was these goals and these things I was supposed to do in this life. And let me tell you, as a mental health worker with a caseload of 22 people that I was getting into housing and trying to get off meth, I was like, oh God, okay, I'm literally going insane, right? I'm literally going insane. But what happened at that stage of my journey was I met a few people that were doing the thing that I'm doing now. And I was blessed to encounter a person who saw me. They literally saw me, and I feel emotional every time I say it, but they looked at me and they said, you're a psychic, you're an intuitive. There's something different about you, and whatever you do, keep going. Don't give up. So here we are, many years later, and really just teaching people how to develop, because every single person has this. And I'm going to make a very bold statement that's going to raise some hackles in the room. You don't need a med bed. You do not need a med bed. All of the technology that you need to heal your mind, body, and spirit is within you at this very moment. So what we're going to be doing here today is talking about some of the technology inherent within the human body. What's actually happening? A dimensional shift that is going to fundamentally alter who you are in the coming years, coming months. As starseeds, wanderers, or what we might call other in Earth origin, we came here with those goals, those missions. And I'm getting a little redundant by reading back my text here, but you guys can see what's going on. And so there's another thing that I really need to state here. You guys can see it on the bottom of the screen. As a person that does this type of work every single day, I think it's important for people to begin to stop externalizing the idea that there's some sort of savior force that's going to show up on the earth plane and, you know, suddenly open up a portal with a bunch of blue avians and we're all going to go into the next stage of consciousness, because we're not. What's happening right now is we are in a stage of building your energy, healing the mind-body-spirit complex, and strengthening our collective so that we are the alliance. And I know for some people that's an interesting thing to hear, because we hear people on Facebook and YouTube and all sorts of podcasts talking every day about how the Earth Alliance and this and that, and how we're going to have some kind of a disclosure event, and suddenly we're all going to know what's going on. And I can promise you that we're going to be waiting for the rest of our lives for that to happen, until the people in this room and the people in this collective, in this community, stand up and begin to understand that we are disclosure. We are the alliance. Look around the people in this room, and I mean that with sincerity. You guys have done this before. We've been here before, and I have a pretty good idea that last time it was one of you guys standing right here. And so, anyway, thank you for making it. You guys are literally being recruited into the alliance here today. So please see yourself as that. I mean, we are literally creating disclosure. We are the alliance. And so please take that with you. If you've made it this far in a human body, it is by no mistake. Think of where you came from, you guys. Did you come here by mistake? Did you somehow wander into Florida? Oh man, I don't know, I just came to this conference. I don't know, I just walked in this door and now there's this crazy guy telling me I have a mission and I'm part of this alliance. But it's true. And so I want to say, honestly, once again, thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being a part of this strange process. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for dealing with all the strange looks and the weird stuff and the moments when you didn't want to wear your mask or whatever it was over the past year, and you knew that there was something inside you. You're like, this is for another reason. This is not right. Why are we doing this? And what's going to happen next? Well, today, hopefully, we're unpacking just a little bit of that. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. Right now, we're at a stage in which certain elements, certain non-physical elements of the human body are expanding on a remarkable and exponential level. And so some of you guys are going to be familiar with the systems that you see here on the screen. Some of you guys are going to be very intimately, you guys are just learning about energy centers for the first time. And so we're going to go through just a little bit of what I believe people need to know about the non-physical body right now. This is the frontier and the realm in which I operated. For me, it is very easy for me to begin to understand and look at these areas, but I believe that's because myself and many other people in this room right now have been called to simplify and explain and begin to disseminate and work with the subtle, the energy flows, and also just the myriad of amazing, absolute intricacy inherent within the human body. And so if you're looking at some of these systems here, wondering, what is this stuff? What does it mean? I've heard of the chakras, right? I might have heard of the meridians as well. People talk about Vegas all the time. That's cool, right? Nothing stays there, just so you know. And everything that comes through Vegas, in fact, if you can't tell, guys, everything that's in Vegas gets known by the entire body. So there's nothing secret there. Trust me. We'll be talking about this guy in a little bit. But anyway, the chakras and meridians represent the most active elements of our expanding energetic anatomy at this stage of the Earth game, along with the vagus nerve, as well as the most secret friend of all. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Some of you guys know in here, if you want to generate true clarity in the human body at this stage, mind, body, spiritual, we have an untapped system that many people are working with, but there it is right there. We'll be talking about the lymphatics in a moment. But along with the vagus nerve and the lymphatic system, these systems are responsible for a tremendous amount of the multidimensional energy that's activating within each of us at this stage of the journey. As we continue to expand to the next stage of human consciousness, these systems play an incredibly expanded role in the development of multidimensional intuition and our latent energetic healing abilities. The important thing to remember for everybody here, because a lot of, I've said this in many presentations, but, let's say you cut open a cadaver, right? And, you'll find the heart, you'll find the lungs, but you won't find the heart chakra. You won't find the small intestine meridian. And you won't even find the third eye. But you will find a soundtrack. Thank you. No, I mean that very sincerely. Thank you. That is perfect. I love it. And so these are non-physical pathways in the body. So I'm just going to say, how many we got a few people, and of course the chakras, everybody's favorite one, right? When I first started this weird thing, have people come to me and they're like, I think I broke my heart chakra. And I was like, because we're talking about non-physical apparatuses, non-physical organs in the body, and let's get real, when we talk about chakras, not that many people know what they are, but technically if you want to translate it, it means wheel, disc, passage point, gateway. And the chakras in the body represent probably the primary infrastructure through which our consciousness is moving. As we go through this ascension journey, the consciousness, as many people know, begins to rise upward in the body. And so one of the first things we need to talk about within the chakra system is the fact that these are the layers that contain a lot of the memories, a lot of the karmic indicators, a lot of the strands of previous experience from what we might incorrectly call past lives. And let's be real, when you actually step outside of the body, you will discover that past is actually now, and all of your past lives are occurring in this now moment. But only here on Earth, on this physical third and fourth density plane, do we perceive the separation and the passage of time. And so one of the places in which those subtle frequencies manifest and the experiences pertaining to the passage of time, karmic indicators, experiences that we came in with, that were destined to happen. Because there's a lot of things that we show up in this body, no matter which way you turn, right, left, up, or down, we're going to have certain experiences. And so as we continue to unpack the non-physical body, we begin to learn that the chakras contain a lot of that information. One of the things we've also understood about the chakra system in the human body is that they're changing, they're shifting. There's an additional network of chakras that are starting to open up on the human body that only a few years ago were lying very dormant. They were not necessarily being unused, but they were being used in a much different way. Case in point, you probably can't see it on the screen, but it's called the Earth Star chakra. It's right underneath our feet, and it's probably one of the most important places you need to be made aware of right now within the chakra body. And why is that? Because if there's ever a place on your body that was kind of like where you plug in your phone, when you plug in your phone, sometimes it doesn't charge and you're like trying to like stick it in there, and then you put it down, right? And you think it's charging, and you come back later and it's not even plugged in, right? Well, we have a place on our body that's very much like that. It's the Earth Star chakra, and it's a few inches underneath your feet. The reason why it's important to mention in this presentation, because there is a place on your body where you actually tap into the non-physical, sentient, living Earth grid. A little bit like a needle on a record. And so we do have a place on the body where that happens. It's the Earth Star chakra. So it's just something that you need to be made aware of, as is something at the very top there, that crazy Soul Star chakra. Notice one's at the top, one's at the bottom. You could even imagine kind of like poles on a battery. Poles on a non-physical human battery that when connected begin an entirely different transmission of energy through the body, oftentimes creating a very expanded upward movement of energy through those chakra layers. And so what we're also discovering along with that is that linked to the chakra system itself is this interesting character over here. And I'll be honest with you, this is my favorite guy out of this whole thing. I kind of imagine these as like superheroes, they're all going to turn into like Voltron or something. And if that happened, I would definitely be this guy, the meridians, because if there's one system you need to know about in your body right now, and this is Matthew's opinion, so some people can throw this out, but it's the meridian system. Imagine, kind of look like circuits, right? Kind of look like, interesting pathways of electricity and information. And if you haven't heard, guys, there's 20 primary meridians in the body. There's 12 primary meridians, and there's 8 extraordinary meridians. But this represents, by my understanding and experience, really the frontier of energy medicine, of multidimensional healing, because one of the things that's happening right now is our meridian system and the chakra system are joining. They're starting to pull together And they're connecting at very interesting places on the body that are fundamentally altering how we experience life on this planet. You can imagine it's a little bit like an ongoing upgrade that's being downloaded into the human body. And so this is something that you need to be made aware of. Just this meridian system right here is really going to redefine how we understand healing in the coming years. And let's also be real, for those of you guys that know, the Chinese have been working with the meridian body for thousands of years. So this is very ancient knowledge that's now activating again on the earth plane. One of the reasons why we're called to talk about this here today is because there's people in this room who are going to become specialists in these very things, and maybe not these exact systems. Well, what we're doing is we're giving you frequencies and pieces of it with you on your own journey to understanding what you're doing here. And so real quickly before we move on, the vagus nerve, incredibly important for those of you guys right now trying to understand your multidimensional intuitive abilities. You're trying to figure out the concept of telepathy and empathic interfacing, which we're going to talk about. The vagus nerve is probably one of the most important places you need to be made aware of, because you can kind of see it there, guys. Imagine a fiber optic cable that connected the majority of, well, let's be real, it connects literally everything in your body. It doesn't reach to everything, but it is an information highway that extends through almost the entirety of everywhere in your body, at least with respect to communication. And so the vagus nerve, for everyone here, is something you need to be made aware of, because it's also one of the areas that's being heavily hijacked and heavily affected by the frequency interference we're receiving right now, whether it's in the form of an injection or whether it's in the form of a frequency that's being broadcasted by the quote-unquote new internet system. The vagus nerve is an incredibly fertile ground for all sorts of manifestations, all sorts of emotional disorders and crazy stuff. And so my prayer is some of you guys are going to be doing some research on the vagus nerve. We're actually going to do a little bit of an activation at the end of this talk here today. But then finally, before we move on, we have, like I said earlier, I think this absolute untapped system in the body known as the lymphatic system. Some of you guys are familiar. Lymphatics have a lot to do with immunity. They have a lot to do with clarity in the body, building blood, and if you want to get technical, it's actually the body's sewage treatment system. And so the lymphatic system on a whole has been heavily weighed down through the weaponized food from heavy metal particulate matter, from chemtrails and all sorts of things that we absorb in the physical body. And many of us right now are walking around on Earth, not necessarily in a critical lymphatic zone, but very much like a the other side of that, aquarium. You might mistake it for something else. You might not see it clearly. You might be clouded in your own bubble of toxicity. And so the lymphatic system for many of us right now is one of the systems that's being hijacked by the so-called powers that were in order to create a very cloudy environment in the human body, eventually leading to certain mass health conditions that are being currently uploaded through an ongoing series of injections that are planned for many people on the earth plane over the next 10 to 15 years. One of the places that's going to be absolutely altered within your body is your lymphatic system. If your lymphatic system is not running, you have absolutely no ability to clean or create clarity in the human body. So you can imagine if somebody wanted to utterly confuse, dumb down, and disable a population, you start working with these areas and almost an entirely with very little evidence, you could start shutting down or altering human consciousness in a very interesting way. So these are systems you guys need to be made. Even if right now you're barely understanding these, even if you're hearing about them for the first time, beings. And so take what you can from that. And so before we go on, we're going to get through some of the weird stuff here. There's some wild, strange, bizarre things we're going to talk about. And then in a little bit, we're going to be talking about some of the upgrades and the really cool things that are happening to the human body. But this is something I always love talking about. In some of my older presentations, we would go on a crazy rant about all this stuff. But today we're going to try to keep it a little bit contained. A lot of you guys have heard of this. The parasitic construct, negative energetic manifestation. Some people call it, the dark realm of spirit, or what is it? So I've even heard it referred to, yes, as the cabal, or any sort of externalized negative energy terminology. That's what we use. I like parasitic construct because the primary purpose behind the existence of this construct and these negative energetic manifestations on the earth plane is to assist with going enslavement of humanity consciousness by keeping us in a never-ending loop of trauma and disempowered. You think about all the people right now watching CNN at home, getting types of disinfo. Sounds very much like a never-ending loop of trauma and disempowered emotional toxicity, if there ever was one, right? And so maybe that's just my opinion. But the concept of or possession has been depicted in some way, right? By sure known on earth, grab any sort of ancient text, some spiritual thing from anywhere in the world, eventually they'll talk about it on some level. Entity attachment usually refers to the process of parasitic attack by a non-physical parasite or other form of fourth dimensional consciousness. What do I mean by fourth dimensional consciousness? A lot about this, but let's be very clear, because we hear a lot of terms, we hear a lot of buzzwords, a lot of ascension terminology. There's bloggers that just string together whole word salads of all kinds of spiritual terms, and people go, oh, beautiful. Whether it be etheric implantation, what we're really talking about are non-physical frequencies, non-physical apparatus, in most cases, pieces of non-physical technology. If you want to get really technical, a lot of the implantation cases that myself and other people are experiencing right now, whether it be chakras or even our own energy, are very much non-living, non-sentient energetic apparatuses that exist within our non-physical realm. And one of the reasons why humans right now are being affected on a greater level by what we might call, anti-life technology, entities, etheric implants, is because our bodies and our perception, the human body itself, is much more able to perceive and feel and work with these energies right now. So I want to be real. It's not like this is happening for the first time. We are just now becoming aware of something that is absolutely existing on our earth plane since we came here. Part of our agreement as beings coming into these human bodies is that we're going to come into the realm of duality. We knew this coming into earth. There's a whole host of wild and interesting beings here, some of them very parasitic. And we also knew coming in that we were going to forget it all. That's our agreement. So part of what we do in these strange presentations is not so much giving you guys like, this is exactly how it is. It's exactly this and only this. What we're doing is helping people remember by hopefully giving you pertinent pieces of information that allow people to begin to reconstruct their own understandings of what you already knew before you came in here. And so, how does this stuff work? What really happens? Most of the implantation, most of the entity attachments that I encounter as a person that does this pretty much every single day, and I know for some people sometimes it's a disappointing thing to hear it, but the majority of the implantation and entity attachment cases I find are really quite literally blocked emotional currents in the body. Some people have heard me say this in somewhat of a humorous way, but this is very real. One person's reptilian implant is another person's childhood sexual trauma. They're entirely interchangeable, and based upon your own internalized vocabulary or catalog of spiritual understandings and what you understand to be real, in certain cases, our trauma will actually take the form of those apparitions, those projections, those frequencies. And the crazy thing is, you guys, we are living on an earth plane right now in which if enough people perceive it, conceptualize it, and understand that it is real, it literally becomes real. For some people, that's still a hard thing to unpack. We've seen this, with certain what we might call tulpas or egregore type creations. One very common one, for those of you guys that have heard of this, is Slender Man, the concept of Slender Man. And so, we're not going to get into a whole rant on that, but what it means is essentially by placing enough of our collective consciousness on an item, a thing, a belief, an identity, we essentially create it. And I'm going to say a thing that's probably going to, it might raise some more hackles, but we're going to understand in the future that this strange wave of viral madness that we're experiencing on the Earth plane, by and large, a big portion of it was actually created by our human consciousness because we were told it was real. And therefore it became real. And so we are at the stage of human consciousness, and if you believe it's real, it becomes that. And so how do we affect the human body with negative energetic manifestations? In some cases, yes, because we've all heard about it. Some being jumps inside us. It sounds cheesy and weird, but it does happen. I will also say it's incredibly rare. As a person that's worked with well over 1,000 people on the Earth plane, I believe that I can recall right now, I've seen maybe 2, possibly 3 individuals that have real, living, sentient, aware beings cognizantly inside them operating their body. In most cases, we are very, very heavily oppressed and affected. And I know some people I've talked to in this room have even had the experience of having one of those beings literally attached to their body, holding on to them. It's a very crazy thing, but where would a non-physical energy or a being or some sort of consciousness attach to your physical body? Where? How would that happen? Well, it's usually the chakras, it's usually the meridians. And for those of us that I think are moving into some of the frontiers of energy medicine right now, they're actually within the organs themselves. One of the things we're going to be discovering through this 4th to 5th density shift is that our organs are a very, very fertile ground for all sorts of emotions and experiences that aren't really contained within the meridians or the chakras or the other systems. And so what we find with negative energetic manifestations is they will usually attach to those areas, the chakras, the meridians. I would say meridian attachment is incredibly common, especially for those of us that get running, very chaotic thought forms that reactivate your old traumas right as you're about to begin to do things or change or heal your life, and you get snapped back into this wave of trauma. A lot of people get that stuff right now. It's just an example of a gallbladder meridian blockage. And so all kinds of wild stuff going on the being with the ability to remove his consciousness out of his body and implant it into yours, thereby hijacking your consciousness. Well, supposedly, that's a picture of a real being. It's a fun thing to Google, for those of you guys that have not heard of it before, but it's Salvador Dali, supposedly holding a real alien. And so, anyway, just a little bit of a detail there. I actually don't know if it's true, but it's a fascinating wormhole to go down, guys. And I think one of the reasons for that is, and here, we have it right here. One important point to remember is that our individual perception of the phenomenon of negative energetic manifestations is entirely subjective. It's dependent upon the level to which we are able to recognize our own energy, our own traumas, our own distortions, and yes, our own biases. Because let me tell you what, if you're one of those people that's like, well, those guys aren't real, what are you talking about? I've never encountered a Sasquatch being or the Arcturian Council of 12, therefore it's not them, right? And so the reality is our perception is really guiding our understanding and our experience of what we know to be real. Just like the collective consciousness is creating wavelengths of, beings and all sorts of conditions that we experience as, a population. Our own individual understanding is also equally forming this reality within the body. And so we saw it here, we said it earlier, but it bears mentioning that in many cases, one person's reptilian implants, yes, another person's trapped childhood trauma. It's absolutely real. Based upon our understanding of our own internal realm, these energies can take very different perceptual forms of the body, and yet they may also be one in the same. For this very reason, we must approach each and every clearing situation with compassion and open minds. Really just a willingness to look beyond the filters of third density separation toward the frequency of truth in any form it may present. The frequency of truth. It's a very important phrase or word that we're going to be talking about later. So the existence of the parasitic construct is no longer the stuff of sci-fi fantasy. It's no longer a movie anymore. It is literally real. We are living in an age right now in which there's a billionaire already putting tons of implants in people's heads. It's literally happening. By the time they announced it, just so you know, that means it's been on at least a 3-year testing run. That's how these things talk about. So there's many people right now existing in this sci-fi fantasy realm alongside us. It is literally real. And I think if there's one thing that we can do as a collective and starseeds that are kind of, understanding that we are the alliance, that our job is to disseminate and disclose this information, I think one of the things we can really begin to internalize is that, yes, there is an absolute dark force existing on the earth plane, both physical and non-physical, but it's why we come here. Part of our journey is to experience, the balance and the catalyst to change. And honestly, if this did not exist on the earth plane, I don't know that many of us would be here right now. This is part of our journey, is to balance and heal and understand many of these things. It doesn't mean everyone here is going to come in contact with these types of entities or these manifestations, but there are things that we need to be made aware of as a collective. And let me tell you, there's a lot more. For those of you guys that have seen some of my live streams, we go a lot weirder into this stuff, but for the sake of time, we're going to keep moving. Because this is probably my favorite energy of the moment. And some of you guys have also heard me say this, but if you recall a few months ago when we were going through all this viral madness and there were all these briefings and people on stage and, and they were talking about the invisible enemy. Invisible enemy, right here. So the concept of the hive mind virus has been explored through many different ascension media outlets and schools of thought over the past few years here on Earth. One of the more well-known examples of this phenomenon is what we call the Wetiko. Yes, also known as Wendigo, Windigo, any sort of combination of those words. They're usually referring in generality to some of the same things. And so depending on what sources you look at as to where this word originated, you might get a little bit of a different story. But where my understanding and the kind of the book in which I picked it up from was from Dispelling Wetiko by Paul Levy. And so his understanding is that this term was attributed to the Algonquin tribe of northern Canada, the United States. Years ago, they began to understand or perceive essentially a mind virus that induces extreme selfishness, cannibalism, both energetic and physical. Always a fun word to use, right? Parasitism and hive mind mentality, leading to abuse, domination, and yes, an insatiable hunger for control, power, security, sometimes blood. Yes, it's real, we know. All under the guise of right action, appropriateness, and maybe we just need to cancel you because you're not safe anymore. You're obviously a threat. So some of the mind wave kind of frequencies that we're receiving right now from the cancel culture scene is basically formed within the human body in what we would call this energetic virus, the Wetiko mind virus. And so what I have seen within the upper echelons of elitism here on planet Earth is, by my understanding, this is the primary evil force, or one of them, that we are working with. And we see the madness in our politicians' eyes, when we see those on the world stage that have been overcome by the desire for power or lust for money or just, the world's most dangerous game, which, if you didn't know, it's got nothing to do with money. Well, this is what's causing it. Granted, there's many other things, many other frequencies, but let's keep going. Once under the Wetiko spell, people lose the capacity to recognize the Wetiko pathology in others. In a situation of group narcissism, Wetikos at different stages of the disease assume particular postures and roles relative to each other that protect and shield themselves from their own insanity and darkness. They feed and reinforce each other's narcissism because it enhances their own. That's a quote directly from Paul Levy's book, so we want to give him credit for that. But some of you guys are already aware of this, but you're going to begin noticing those big players on the world stage right now, and you're going to start to understand this very interesting wavelength that we're encountering. Yes, it is the wavelength that will physically tackle you and throw you out of a Target store for not wearing a mask. That's a really, really good example of a mind virus in action, guys. I mean that very sincerely. But in addition to eco, we must also be made aware of additional technological and energetic maladies, such as droning. That's always a fun one to talk about. Human cloning operations, which is a wonderful can of worms, and essentially the hijacking of human consciousness through repeated administration of parasitic technological frequencies designed to create, keyword guys for the future, entrainment and trance-like states within the body in which you'll just kind of go into autopilot and do and act and exist and speak and take your medication and your injections as you are told. And so you can see them over there on the left-hand corner of the screen. Those are our friends. I like to call them the AI prophets, whatever term you want to use. The reason why I chose to include these individuals on the screen here is because I think these are really, really good examples of individuals that have been affected quite heavily by what we will call this mind virus. So if you want to get technical, in the case of Mr. Bezos down here on the left corner, actual technology that has been placed within the human body, non-physical technology. It's very important for people to kind of grab onto this because one of the things you're going to be discovering in the coming years are actual pieces of invisible technology that are currently existing on human bodies at this moment. Mr. Bezos is a really good example of it when you look at the left eye. And the fun thing about that, for those of us in the room that want to get a whole other kind of audio-visual internalized presentation of what you're receiving here, you can also look at my left eye as well. For those of us that are trying to unpack telepathy, you're going to get also an additional wavelength. And so one of the reasons why we're showing these individuals right now is because there are organic versions of this technology and there are non-organic versions of this technology. One of the things we're going to understand about cloning on the Earth plane in the coming years is there are many different forms of it. A lot of the people that we're seeing on the world stage right now, well, maybe not a lot, but a certain number of them are quite literally programmed life forms that have been grown through a process that has been very well perfected over many decades. And so some of these individuals, maybe that you're seeing down there on the bottom left screen, at least one of them is not a living human at this stage. One of them has a very important piece of technology placed in their body, and the other one has a very important piece of non-physical technology placed in the body that's altering, changing, inspiring, and downloading pieces of information designed to influence what this person brings to the world stage. The true concept of an AI prophet. And so I think it's important for you guys to understand that when you see cloning stuff and you hear about all the bizarreness about it, most of the people we understand as clones right now, by my understanding, they're still physical humans, but there's a partitioning process that we're going to begin to understand in the coming years in which you can have your consciousness overwritten. And so you could literally be me right here, but they'll overwrite the consciousness and it's a different version of you. And so the reason why we're trying to unpack that in an awkward way here is because I think it's really important for people to understand that, number one, cloning is real. It's an absolute fact of life. And I'm going to make a very important prediction. Before we receive governmental disclosure, whatever that means, you're going to get disclosure about cloning. I promise you. It will happen in our lifetime. And so, but you're also going to learn about consciousness overriding. And one of the things we're going to understand about the Left Eye Club, those of you guys have seen the pictures of elites with this little bruise on the left eye, for many of them, that's actually not a sign that they're a clone. And I want to be real straight up because you're going to see a lot of people and big people on Twitter and bloggers say, well, you know, that's an insert point. Actually, that's the overwrite point for the human body. It's a tube that's inserted into the outer canthus of the corner of the left eye right here. It connects to 2 places in your brain. Actually, I think it connects to 7 if you want to get technical. I have identified 2 places in the brain that allow for the consciousness overriding process. One of them is called Wernicke's region, mostly located on the back left over here, usually above your ear. And another one is right here above your temple, and it's called Broca's region. And so these places in the brain, upon being hit or affected, transmitted energy through what we know as brain glymph, which is a liquid surrounding the outside of your brain. It essentially allows for human consciousness to be overwritten in the body, kind of like taking a thumb drive and just putting a whole other program on it. You'll get a whole other version of a person. And so it's one of the things that people need to be made aware of. Not all these politicians are clones. Most of them, in some cases, are just human beings that have had their consciousness overwritten or have also been blackmailed. Some of them have incredible, incredible programming. And so what we're doing is just giving you guys examples to use your own discernment and to kind of, build your own understanding. Because just because I'm saying it right here doesn't make it true. I'm giving you my understandings and what I've seen on the earth plane. And so you guys are going to also find your own versions, your own understandings of that. But these are things that we need to be made aware of. One of the things we're going to find in the coming years, and this is going to be, assuming that we're not on this timeline, but for those of us on the earth plane that are currently following this scheduled round of injections and alterations that are due to take place to your DNA system, what you're going to find in the coming 5 years is many people are going to become literally remote controlled beings. One of the sort of rounds of testing they did with some of the non-physical brain implants is they were able to create a myriad of reactions in the body, anywhere from defecation, urination, orgasm, states of unconsciousness within seconds. They can knock your body out. It's a very fascinating thing. And so the reason why we're hearing about this is because I think it's something that people need to know. It doesn't mean it's going to happen to everyone, but for those of us dutifully following the scheduled injections over the next 5 years, you're uploading that framework into your body, the literal operating system that facilitates the permanent transfer of the Wetiko mind virus as a state of being in your body. And so, before I go on an even longer tangent about that, food for thought. Take what you can. Let's keep rolling. So all that weird stuff aside, one of our primary missions here in the body on planet Earth is figuring out this crazy thing. The frequency of truth. Because I was just saying it, right? Just because I say it's this way, just because Matthew has remote viewed the human body and we found all kinds of places in the brain and actually researched those places in the brain and found out what they actually do and how they work, doesn't mean that it's true. Doesn't mean that it's actually happening. Although I do believe that if we have the ability to conceptualize an understanding right now, it means that it exists on some level, on some plane. But let's talk about the frequency of truth. I think that if there's a skill that's developing on the earth plane right now, this is probably one of the most important things that you can begin to work on in your own life. And understanding and developing our ability to discern the frequency of truth is one of the most critical aspects of awakening into our mission as multidimensional beings. As our energetic anatomy continues to activate, we can find ourselves getting mixed up at times between our own energy and that of the outside world. As a person that does this most every day, I would say all of the weird stuff aside and all of the bizarre darkness, and let's be real, it's not all dark, but a lot of what we're trying to understand as an individual that does this every day is really truth. What is real and what's really going on? What's actually happening in the body. And so as our energetic anatomy continues to activate, we find ourselves trying to unpack that. We get it wrong all the time. A lot of us got all kinds of crazy feelings and signals as children, and most of us just disregarded it. We knew something was up and we went, yep, no, I'm cool, I'm good. We kind of muscled our way through life. But what we find out later on is in order to fully step into our power and to truly activate the intuitive frequencies inherent within each of us, we need to become intimately familiar with what our own energy feels like. What's me? What's you? Where do I end and you begin? And so one of the really cool things about the work that I get to do is understand and figure out and discover these places in people's bodies day by day in our own ways. And over the past 4 years, I think it's been 4 years. Who knows? Over the past period of time in which I've been doing this 100% full time, my concept of time is horrible. We've identified a few areas on the human body that I believe have a tremendous impact on how you perceive truth, on how you take in information, on how you understand what's real, on where you put it, on how you use it, on how you create plans and forward action. And so let's talk about them real quick. One of those we saw earlier, one of the 4 characters in our strange lineup earlier, that was the vagus nerve and the gut-brain axis. And so I'll just say it once again. If you don't already know, the vagus nerve is the 10th pair of cranial nerves on the body. It extends down from the back of your head. And if you want to find a really easy way to access your vagus nerve, because everyone wants to talk about it, but not that many people know where it is, right here, right at the base of your top of your collarbone. You'll even feel those tendons kind of tighten, You'll feel this area right here. Vagus nerve's right here, coming straight down. It's also in the fleshy spot, right back here at the back of your head, underneath the base of your skull, to the left or the right of the suboccipital ridge. Right down here, there's a mass of tendons that move down, and so that's where the vagus nerve is pretty easily accessed in the body. But let's be real, the simplest way to access your vagus nerve is very deep, slow, controlled breathing. It's the absolute easiest way to do it, and it never fails. And for those of us that enjoy singing, well, congratulations, you're an expert at hacking your vagus nerve, because as soon as we begin to vocalize and create tones, which we're going to do in a little while, the vagus nerve, our anatomy, things begin to vibrate and change. They open up, and for some of us, that gut-brain axis, which if you don't know, we've got several brains in our body. That's a fun one, right? But we have another brain complex right down here in our gut. And so in order for that to activate, in order for us to be able to begin using our intuitive abilities, in order for us to be able to begin unpacking a thing called claircognizance, which through my research is usually one of the first intuitive abilities that begins to activate in the body, but it's also the most commonly disregarded. And if you don't know what claircognizance is, it's that feeling when you just know. You just know. I know it. I have no reason to know, but I know. And if you know what I'm talking about, that's a very strange feeling, right? Especially when you have no evidence for that. And so a lot of people disregard that signal. And so many of us are walking around right now with an energetically suppressed gut-brain axis, meaning that we'll receive information, but we won't necessarily be able to internalize it, understand it, or really, spread it throughout the body in a useful way that allows us to integrate it. And so one of the places that gut-brain axis interacts with very heavily is an important set of chakras on the body that also, through the work that I do, I have identified, as well as many others, as being probably, in my opinion, some of the most active within the chakra body for those of us that are learning to step into our mission, really communicate ourselves, to use our voice right now. And so one of the things we're seeing in this fourth density shift is a very peculiar connection between the solar plexus and the throat chakras. You could even imagine it, sort of, and for some of you guys, it's a really weird thing, but it's almost like a little tube. It goes from your solar plexus right up to your throat, which is strange, right? Because you're like, what about the heart? What do you mean? Well, it actually can totally bypass the heart. And if you guys want to see really good examples of completely heart bypassed solar plexus throat energy, turn on the news, turn on TV, look at people in places of, journalists, and you're going to see that there's many people on the earth plane that have activated a very distinct ability to communicate verbally, to speak or disseminate some form of information, but it can be completely devoid of any heart-based compassion or even entirely outside of any empathic frequencies. A lot of that is due to this throat chakra, solar plexus chakra connection that begins to activate in fourth density. And so one of the ways that we also activate our intuitive abilities that allows us to begin using those connections and to speak truth to the intuitive understandings we receive is by opening the throat chakra. I would say on a generalistic level right now, most of the people on the earth plane, myself included, are in a really huge yellow ray activation stage, which is to say we're actively working with the solar plexus. It's opening up. We're beginning to understand our power differently, our capabilities differently, and all kinds of stuff. And so those are very important things to be made aware of, as are the pericardium, gallbladder, and triple heater meridians. Now, there's a few people in here who have been to my classes, and they know I have to be careful, because if I start talking about those, the sun will be going down, and you guys are like, what? Oh my God. And so let's just say this much, okay, guys? The pericardium meridian, anyone heard of it? Okay, perfect. A few people here have heard of the pericardium meridian. A lot of us right now on the earth plane are very wounded. We're dealing with all kinds of damage from past relationships. Some of us keep attracting narcissistic personality types or come into social situations in which we're constantly dealing with parasitic energies, our own wounds. We don't really know how to connect with people, but we want to. We feel wounded. It's too much. We're very sensitive beings. And the pericardium is an incredible channel for mitigating, releasing, healing those sensitivities, especially how you feel about yourself. When you look in the mirror, when you see your bodies and your face, you feel that thing called self-love or absence of self-love. there's a literal channel on your body that has a tremendous amount to do with it. And so if anyone here wants to start softening the pericardium and opening up your heart walls just so you can connect with people greater, I'll show you a really easy and yes, a cheesy thing you can do right now. I'm not flipping you off, but if you take your middle finger and start, I promise you guys, work with your middle finger. I know this is cheesy, but this is a connection to your pericardium. It goes right down your middle finger, all the way to your heart. So one of the things we do in sessions, sorry, I know I'm not on the mic, but you'll begin working with your middle finger and your ring finger. And it's almost like, for those of you guys that want to try this, you're just going to go through and massage them while we're talking. You can do both at the same time. I know people get weird when you stick your middle finger up, so we'll do both. But really, start working with these pathways on your body, because believe it or not, through this, fourth density shift, there's all kinds of access points on your body where you can start moving and opening up energy in ways that in the past were totally different. And so believe it or not, one of the ways we can start to open up just the walls and the difficulty we have connecting with ourselves and others, triple heater energy as well, for those of you guys that know, is by working with those two middle fingers. It's just a strange little detail I like to throw in here. Some of you guys have been in my sessions and you'll know we literally pop energy out of our fingers, our toes. We have the ability to do this. And so anyway, we're throwing that out there. Pericardium, self-love, triple heater meridian, very important for when you receive new information. Everybody will get some news from the world and you'll sort of receive it, or kind of like, and your body will close and will sort of fold up. Very much a triple warmer or triple heater meridian response. It's responsible for your discernment, for what you allow in, the sort of barriers and such. And so places that you need to be made aware of. Also the gallbladder. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but when I talk about the gallbladder, I don't mean the gallbladder. I mean the gallbladder meridian. This crazy weird line that stretches all over your body that holds your thought forms, your ideas, constantly circling. And so by learning how to clear, by learning about what these channels are, by just doing, yes, I'll say it, just doing an image search, and going, I don't know, this weird guy Matthew at this conference, he told me about these channels. I'm just going to look him up. And so just by doing that, you guys, on Earth at this stage, we will begin unpacking an understanding of where certain emotions, certain thought forms hide in the body. And so along with that, the thymic and high heart chakra. Now, I say this in every single class, but this is one of the most important things you got to know. Because first off, the thymic chakra for most of us is one of the areas on your body that we often confuse for the throat chakra. A lot of people come into social situations and we start talking to people and we get this lump in our throat, or there's something we have to say, or in this intense situation and you're like, you feel this thing in your throat. And for many of us, in the future, we're going to begin to understand that as the concept of the high heart chakra being loaded with energy, like an energetic magnet. Many of us on the earth plane are becoming so much more empathic, and we're going to start to understand the thymic and the high heart chakra as one of the places on the human body in which you magnetize other people's emotions. So when we walk into a room, and maybe the record stops, it's like, and everyone's like, you get that feeling and you're like, and everything kind of tightens up. You're going to understand that it's being kind of a thymic chakra thing. And for many of us, it's because we're drawing in the energy of the room. It's coming into our body and we're starting to feel it. For those of us that can extrapolate what that means is, on the other side of that thymic high heart chakra is an incredible ability, empathic interfacing. The ability to share information, emotions, and even images with people. Some of you guys are getting it right now within your own internalized system. And so that's where we receive those. And so real quickly before we move on, we already talked about the lymphatic system there, but very, very important. It's our human body sewage treatment system. As is the interstitium. Some of you guys will know what it is. It's really just a fancy word for your fascia. If you ever want to confuse people and give them a really, like a kind of a complicated medical term, say interstitium. But if you guys haven't heard of the interstitium, some people regard it as being actually the largest organ in your body. What? How is that possible? Well, what we discover with the interstitium or the fascia is similarly to the lymphatic system. It is an entirely liquid network that exists in the body. And so for those of us trying to understand clarity, for those of us that really want to know what's going on in the world, these are areas on your body that you can learn about and heal and unpack that are going to help you actually figure out what's true. And so the functionality in each of these areas will be different for each of us based on our own path, experiences, traumas, and programming. Once we gain awareness of the subtle interplay between these areas, we can begin monitoring incoming energies and testing each frequency. Again, our own self-knowledge, experience, memories, and what we know to be ours. Other than knowledge of self accumulated through life experience, there really is no one best way to unlock your body's abilities or your ability to read the frequency of truth or all of your intuitive abilities. There's really no one finite way. There's not one, step one, do this, step two, do that. We're all figuring this out together, but one of the ways we will truly create headway and really activate our ability to understand truth is by, unpacking our biases, healing the inner child. And, in the beginning, one of the simplest exercises we can do is first establish a baseline of this is me. This is how I feel. This is how I think. For some of us, that's an incredibly simplistic concept where we're like, yeah, of course I know. Of course I know, right? I know my energy. I know what it feels like. Right? I think I do, right? You guys see where I'm going with it. And so one of the first things we need to do is understand, what's mine and what's yours. If you're an empath in this room, and if you haven't figured out, literally everyone in here is an empath. I mean, that's why you are here. It's one of the most difficult things for us to do is figure out when we're being affected. Is that my emotion that I feel when I walk in the room, or is that your anxiety? Maybe it's both of ours. I don't know. Anyway. Over time, we begin to find out that an outside energy will have a completely different vibration. Developing our sensitivity to that vibration can be helped by consistent clearing of, the lymphatic system, your body's aquarium, your solar plexus chakra, right here in the body, if you don't already know, the vagus nerve, which we talked about, gut-brain axis, and probably the most sought-after energy center in the human body. Everyone's always talking about it, the third eye, right? Everybody wants your third eye open. One of the things we're going to understand in the future is the feeling or the experience of the third eye opening is also different for each and every person. I will even go so far as to say we will understand that it's not even necessarily a visual apparatus in the body, but one part of what we would call a fourth density infrastructure that enables visual perception within the energy body. But anyway, as I digress. So we've been through some of the strange intricacies, We've been through some of the bizarreness. We looked at some of the negative energetic manifestations. We've rambled on about a few, strange things. And at this stage, we're going to talk about what's coming, what's happening, what's activating in your human body. And probably for many of us here, we're telegraphing some of the experiences that are going to unpack for you guys in the coming years and things that are already happening. One of those is the concept of telepathy, empathic interfacing, and the manner in which we share energy as human beings. Now, we all already know this. We live in a shared fourth density astral space in which every living being is inextricably connected through a vast cosmic web of multidimensional energy that we're constantly interacting with every single day, all the time, from the moment that we wake up, in our sleep. Every moment on this earth plane, we are in constant contact with a myriad of energetic frequencies, sources, beings, other versions of ourselves, all sorts of strange things. And so we share thoughts, we share emotions, we share dreams, and we even share day-to-day experiences with one another within a seemingly internalized astral space that many of us, we still regard it as being inside our imagination, right? That's not real. It's inside my head. They won't know that I'm doing that, right? It's in my head. They won't feel it. What if that changed? What if it changed? What if it was never actually that way? But maybe some of us had a few dials and little areas in our body that hadn't exactly been turned on yet. One of the strange things that started happening to me in 2017, this is a very fun and somewhat vulnerable thing to talk about, is I started to run into people that I hadn't seen for a while, and I would walk up to them and I would literally hear them in my head say, "I can hear you now, I can hear you now." And they would literally acknowledge me in a very strange way. Some of you guys here in this conference have done that as well. You also know that it's happening. but you're not really sure, and you're wondering, did they actually get that? Did he actually receive that? Could they know that I thought that? Well, let's be real, you do still have a safe place within the mental environment, but the literal fact of life is we are all communicating in this now moment. For those of you guys that are really tuned in, you're going to get a whole other multimedia presentation right here. And so these are just examples of how you guys are going to unpack this, but you know, you've already experienced it when you're thinking of somebody and then they message you on Facebook a few minutes later, or, you know, you wake up in the morning and you're thinking of this one thing and then it shows up online. We are constantly exchanging this information with each other. One of the things we're going to understand about, you know, the real fourth density life cycle is that all is known. Everything. All the motivations, all the ideas, who you truly are, what you truly are is 100% available. And a lot of the deceptions and the strange sort of, you know, presentations and the portrayals we see of people on the earth stage right now, in the coming years, none of that's really going to be able to hold up. We're going to see exactly what is happening. That's part of our understanding and part of our experience here as humans as we get to go through this unpacking of all this strange multidimensional stuff. And so, as expanding multidimensional beings, it's critical we start to understand a few aspects of this seemingly new, it's not really new, it's been there all the time, shared astral space. Now, this is a cheesy phrase, everyone knows this. Energy flows where attention and intention goes. And so that's one of the, what I would call differentiating factors. It's going to help people understand, you know, when am I sending this thought form? Who's receiving it? How does that work? One of the ways in which you're going to begin to understand the difference between thoughts that flow wildly out into the space and, you know, things that are real is through intention. The body gives off. For those of us that begin to organically unpack the experience of telepathy, it begins for most of us by opening the heart chakra. We begin to experience compassion, self-forgiveness, self-healing. We open up certain barriers in the body and we start sharing emotions on a much different level. Some of you guys have experienced this in your own way already. And your emotions, they're your most powerful amplifier or the barrier. One of the things I started to unpack when I first started working with energy is that I thought that I would feel it differently. I thought, you know, I was like, it's going to be like this force lightning, man, and you're doing this thing, and there it is, it's totally working. And let's be real, for most of us, the way energy flows and the way we're going to perceive energy is really not necessarily a physical force, although it is 100% physical in terms of how we feel it. Most of us begin to feel the energy of chi or conscious energy in our body through our emotions. When things get heightened and you get those tears and that like, you know, that passion burning inside you. For most of us, we're going to begin to understand in the future that that is a very, very fertile force, almost like an energetic capsule for sending energy. And when we do things in those states with true intention, it will change. It's one of the things that differentiates just sending a thought out in the world and literally sending energy out. And so your emotions will be the amplifier or the barrier. It is an absolute fact, as is this crazy thing called heavy metal toxicity. Oh, Lord, everyone's an expert on heavy metal detox nowadays, right, guys? But really, if there's one physical thing that you can do to help open up, to reduce brain fog, to release what is a literal ring effect that begins to form around the upper chakras, detox heavy metal out of your body, namely aluminum. And I know there's many, many metals right now. As soon as you name one of them, everyone's like, what about this one? Clearly, educate yourself, you know, that sort of thing. But aluminum is probably one of the most toxic heavy metals we're consuming right now. And it will directly slow down your intuitive ability. It actually creates a ring around the upper chakras, right around here, around your forehead. It joins with the bone plate right here, known as the sphenoid. And it creates kind of like a ring of static within the human body that it's very, very difficult for us to send and receive. You can imagine it like, one of those 80s TVs is on in the corner going, you know what I mean? Like, you will not be able to tell what is happening. And so heavy metal toxicity is a game changer for those of you trying to unpack telepathy. And so work with it. You're going to have a moment, really after detoxing and working with your energy in which you will be able to tell you are literally sharing thoughts with people. If you haven't experienced it yet, please trust yourself. It is a fact of your life. We also find that telepathy is the standard method of multidimensional communication with both physical and non-physical higher dimensional beings. This process begins in the human body with a function known as empathic interfacing. But before we go further, I want to back up because I'll say this again. Telepathic interfacing and communication is the absolute standard of communication between humans and non-physical multidimensional beings. Some people out there are going to get a little bit offended when I say this, but the ETs are not going to text you. They will never text you on your YouTube channel. They're not going to send you a Facebook message. It's literal truth that they communicate telepathically. There are no words. And I'm going to say another thing that makes a couple people upset. Very rarely do they ever tell you where they're from. Very, very rarely. For those of you, and many of us have encountered a true multidimensional sentient being, they do not roll in and say, hey, by the way, I'm from the Arcturian Council of Nine. How's it going? We got a download for you. That's literally not how it happens. Although we have many experiences like that with our multidimensional higher self council, who have an absolute duty to play that role and to present themselves as a consciousness within our own internalized realm so that we will more accurately receive and understand information. It doesn't mean that we're not in contact with a myriad of extraterrestrial forces. What it means is that the method in which they communicate with us is in our head. They're never going to show up in a portal in your world. That's not true. Some of them do, but by and large, our contact experiences occur through downloads and the emotional energy that we carry, receive, transfer from others, and also from the non-physical realms. And so please take that with you. Feel free to call me out on that one, but that's been my experience. And so one of the ways that we can begin to allow this to happen for ourselves is by truly healing the emotional body. That's one of the things that makes way for empathic interfacing, which I would say, if, for those of you guys that are trying to understand what's the form of telepathic communication I'm using right now, it's very much what I would call empathic interfacing. You can think of it kind of like a simplified form of telepathy, one that is facilitated through the sending and receiving of emotions, simple thought forms, feelings, or even images that will be shared with one another in the midst of a verbal conversation, at a distance, during meditation, or in other moments of highly concentrated energy flow in the body. Yes, also right now. Thank you for acknowledging the images that you're receiving mentally. It's absolutely real. And so by the time we leave this physical world, many of us, well, we already are, but many of us here in this room will be in constant contact, constant communication through non-verbal frequencies emitted by the human body. All will be known. All will be present. And yes, the veils of third density separation will all but be dissolved. Part of our experience here on the earth plane is to get to have that experience. It's part of why we incarnated, is to go through this great shifting of the veils. Now, does that mean that's going to happen for each and every person on the earth plane? My belief is that it can. But will it? That's an entirely individual choice that each soul makes during this process. We're actually making the choice right now. And if you're in this room, honestly, it's my belief is because you chose to be a part of this ascension process and to go through these experiences. And so before we move on, some of you guys know about this, but this is the beginning of what we know as the social memory complex. The stage in which a population or a group of beings begins to communicate as one. Information is shared. And when we reach that stage in our Earth game, in my opinion, that's going to be one of the experiences that we talk about as, being externalized through a solar flash or an ascension event. It is entirely internal. But that's my understanding. We got a couple more things. Thanks, you guys. Let's keep going. Did I skip one of those? I think I did.
We're not going to get burned up.
Are we going to get burned up? Do you want to get burned up? Okay, well, let's be real about this. And once again, I'm going to say that just opened a fun can of worms, because we hear a lot of people talk about a prison planet, right? Like, man, we're stuck down here on Earth in this simulation. Oh man, get me out of here, right? I'm just going to tell you my view. Earth is not a prison planet. It has never been a prison planet. It will never be a prison planet. However, if you feel like it's a prison planet, maybe it is for you. Each of us comes here with an entirely individual experience that we will understand as, either a liberation, a mission, a number of those things. Some of them, yes, will absolutely be very, very, prison-like. We'll feel trapped here on this crazy planet, but one of the reasons or one of the things or one of the groups as we kind of shift, this is me taking the wheel of the car, guys. We're going to turn over here to this crazy neighborhood. Because one of the real big messages that I was asked to give today is probably one of the most weirdest and kind of vulnerable messages that I've given out throughout this entire process. Here living on Earth and going through this strange activation thing and, doing the stuff that I do. We are in a contact gateway right now with a group of beings from a realm known as New Atlantis. By my understanding, New Atlantis is populated by many different beings from many different what we would call star systems or other points of origin. And they are one of the ET groups that are currently working amongst and with us here on Earth. They are not physical beings. They do not show up in physical bodies. They work through human intermediaries, through our own internalized experiences, the information, the healing, the magic and energy that we share with each other here in this body. And so this includes a host of, yes, physical and non-physical beings who have a vested interest, be it karmic or otherwise, because a lot of the ET groups working with us on the Earth plane right now are also working with us for very karmic reasons. We could technically say, maybe they have to, in order for them to go through some of their own, what we might call ascension or dimensional shift experiences through their own consciousness. There's a lot of karma with the beings on Earth. A lot of us humans have been, very heavily, altered, changed, influenced. And so a lot of the beings on the Earth plane right now are also here for very karmic reasons. My personal understanding is that is one of the reasons why we are now encountering the New Atlantis timeline. For some of us that are aware, in some of our recent incarnational cycles, we were actually part of the groups within the realm known as Atlantis who were very much involved in what we might call the fall of Atlantis. And at that stage, what was essentially the hijacking, the willing hijacking of human consciousness by an organic and non-organic ancient artificial intelligence that presented itself on the Earth plane for the express purpose of advancing our human consciousness. And so this is a process we've been through before. And my understanding is, most of us that are here talking about, the opposite of that are back, because last time we were like, let's join with it, let's do it. And so now we're back to correct that timeline. And so one of the groups of beings that's working with us are the New Atlanteans. By my understanding, if you are here in this room right now, you are connecting with that version of yourself in what we might call a fifth density plane. For some of you guys that know the stuff I talk about, I don't even talk about 5D stuff. Our experience here on Earth is not in fifth density. I know for some people, they're like, I'm in 5D, what are you talking about? We're actually in a fourth density experiential gateway in which we become aware of the concept of fifth density, meaning that we now are able to perceive that it is a real thing, but our experience here in human bodies is in a fourth dimensional gateway. Within the fourth dimensional gateway, human consciousness organically opens to a host of different frequencies. And so we're going to real quickly just describe the New Atlantean timeline. Some of you guys have been aware, one of the kind of the concepts of my journey here on the Earth plane, and to be honest with you, it's a slide I accidentally skipped. But one of the absolute most important experiences myself and many other people are having is astral travel and out-of-body experiences, and the ability that we have to move outside of our human bodies 100% completely sober within the energy of the moment and begin to experience multidimensional realms. A whole host of beings. And so one of the things that's been happening for me and a few others is over the past year, we have been organically visiting this other realm known as New Atlantis. Some of you guys are going to have dreams of this. Some of you guys are going to receive the transmission in your body right now. But New Atlantis is a realm in which we are existing within pyramids. That's probably the standard method of transportation and existence within this realm. And right now, we are communicating with each other, connecting with each other from these pyramids within the New Atlantean realm, in which our duty is to connect with us on Earth. And so as you look at my eyes and as you look at the eyes of every person in this room, you are looking through the eyes of your aspect, the fractalized version of yourself on another realm. Within this realm, the entire surface of the planet is covered with a gelatinous blue glowing liquid. This glowing liquid is a sentient force that is used and sent throughout the galaxies and the non-physical realms, kind of like a current of liquid or energy that reaches every sentient being able to receive the wavelength. One of the events that happened in late December of 2020 is we went through a very, very important experiential gateway and a physical timeline shift on the Earth plane that allowed this group to begin showing up on a greater level. And so one of the ways you're going to be connecting with the energy of New Atlantis is by connecting with yourself, by connecting with the energy, the emotions, the experiences, the dreams, and the new images that you feel when you look at your eyes in the mirror, when you look at yourself and you wake up in the morning and you feel those changes in your body. You are connecting with a new version of you, or we could even say an ancient version of you, who has a very, very vested interest in this time we're in right now. Because like I said earlier, yes, we're repairing the timeline. It's part of what we came back here to do. And so before we get to the activation stage, I am going to rewind really quickly, just because I think this is an important thing that people need to know. And so what we are going to do in a few minutes is we're going to do a little bit of an energetic activation. But before we do that, just real quickly, I want to move back up to the astral travel. There it is. We skipped over it. This is something that we also need to talk about, because like I just said, it's been the fact of my existence. And one of the messages that I received when I was putting together the information for this presentation was that there were certain things I had to talk about. One of those was the empathic interfacing. One of those is the timeline of New Atlantis, which we're going to experience inside our body in a few minutes. And also this astral travel and out-of-body experience, because we are, many of you guys in this room, and some of the people on the live stream as well, you are the explorers of the new frontier. We have now entered a stage in our collective Earth experience in which we will begin to fundamentally redefine our understandings of extraterrestrial contact, what we call the spirit realms, and even the concept of time travel, which is always a fun one. Most people know this right by now, but you do not need a device for time travel. We do not need the DeLorean. We don't need the TARDIS. Your body is the vehicle. It's literally a multi-dimensional vehicle for travel. And one of the experiences that we have upon connecting with the new Atlantean version of ourselves is it begins to open up the filters and the blockages within the upper chakras that enable us to begin moving outside of the body. Now, for many of us, the concept of out-of-body experiences has been a thing that's been happening since childhood, depending on the level of trauma that we experience, depending on, yes, the diameter of your crown chakra, and many, many other things in the body. Some people are going to have a really easy time. Some people will just pop out of the human body and have all kinds of experiences. But for others, like myself, oh, Lord, it is a process that we have to learn. But in my opinion, kind of like playing guitar. Anybody play guitar here? Okay, you probably agree anyone could play guitar, right? As long as you practice, right? You'll figure out the chords. Anyone can play, 3 chords on the guitar. And kind of like when we were in school, right? Some kids were really good at sports, that kid was really good at basketball, so-and-so is really good at math. Some people are naturally really, really good at intuitive, psychic, out-of-body travel, all of those things. Except we live in a society that places no value and no importance and really no emphasis on understanding those skills. And so what's happening right now on the Earth plane is there's kind of a mandatory activation for some people that have this. Yes, it's a thing you can shut down. You can absolutely shut it down. But for those of us that are interested in beginning the stage of your human experience in which you start to move outside of the body and begin to experience your own contacts, your own understandings, well, it's possible. And one of the ways you're going to begin to do it is by opening up some layers in your upper chakras. Things like the third eye, the most sought after, the crown chakra, the Bindu chakra, which is a fun word. How many people have heard of a Bindu chakra? Oh, cool. One person. I love it. So this is also a really important thing that people need to know, that I'm going to be honest with you. Not many people within our, multidimensional community right now are talking about the additional layers of openings on the human body that will actually open up your ability to move out of the body. One of those is known as the Bindu chakra or moon portal. It exists right in the back of your head. You could say it's technically opposite your third eye. But upon activation of that energy center, energy begins to flow into the body differently. Things that you were never taught, information that you have no way to possibly know, begin to activate in your body. We could even say ancient knowledge from past lives. And so one of the things that happens when that Bindu chakra opens up is it's a lot easier for us to move out of the body. In fact, it even facilitates the opening of another little place in the back of your neck, right back here, where the astral cord connects on your body, also known as the cerebellum chakra. Some people call it an alta major. There's a million words for it. But what happens is when we begin to open up what we might call some of the pressure points or the infrastructure around the top of the human body, it enables us to begin moving up and out. So these are important things for you guys to learn about. Some people call them causal or portal chakras as well. But these are energy centers on the body that can be tuned and opened, and we're experiencing organically as well. So dreams, meditations, visions, trauma, they will all be activators for this ability, as well emotions, thought forms. Our programs, for many of us, are some of the greatest hindrances to making this energy work, for starting to move outside of the human body. And I'll be honest with you, if you believe you can or you can't, you're 100% right. And I know some people take that as this like, huh, what? But really, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are absolutely correct. And so how do we facilitate this though? Sure, we mentioned some chakras, right? Some strange places on the body. We talked about our emotions. We talked about healing the inner child. But really, by learning how to clear and maintain our non-physical energy systems, we can greatly expand our abilities to move outside of the human body into this astral space. In fact, I'll say for me, as a person who I would say since October of 2020 has been in a regular weekly astral travel training program in which myself and others have been consciously moving outside of the body on a regular basis and visiting all kinds of realms, it is something that we can truly do. Absolutely. And so please take that with you. If there's anything, I mean, you guys can experience this contact for yourself. It does not have to be something that you have to wait for a briefing from your favorite secret space program survivor to tell you about. You have the ability to begin to understand and figure these things out. And so if there's something that you take from this, understand that you can. As well, the ability to consciously leave the body will come naturally. Like I said, for some of us. For others, it'll take a tremendous amount of work and development. In some cases, special abilities or senses will be held back by blockages in the body. Our ego programming. For me, that's always been a huge one. I get very angry and annoyed, and I think I know everything, and then it's all gone. And so there's a lot of work that we have to do on our emotional body to create these openings. But we must always remember that compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love will be your greatest allies in releasing these blockages. I mean, truly, truly, truly. And so even though it's a fundamental aspect of our existence here, astral projection can be one of the hardest to master. This is in part due to the consumption of toxins and weaponized food, heavy metal built up in the body, which we heard about, and especially dense thought forms or trapped emotion. In fact, in my opinion, it's the primary force. Trapped, dense, traumatized, pressurized emotion in the body, and the level to which we just hold it and roll around with it over and over again for years of our life can create a very, very difficult, stagnated, internalized environment in which, we will feel utterly stuck in this physical realm. We'll feel trapped here. We'll feel like we have no power, and who knows, some of us will even feel like we're on a prison planet. But anyway, one of the most helpful things you can do to initiate this experience for yourself is to first give yourself permission. Seriously. I had to give myself permission to start doing intuitive work. I had to literally look myself in the mirror in 2017 and go, okay, I guess we're gonna do this. And I had to actually give myself permission. And when I started to have experiences of moving outside the body, I felt my body go outside and lift out, and I was like, oh God, and I instantly snap back in. And it took me honestly about 10 years to have that experience again. And for me, I had to give myself permission. I had to go, okay, Matthew, it's okay. You can do this. And it's not to say that if we give ourselves permission, poof, it happens. There's a million other things we got to do. But for a lot of us, some of the reasons why some of these things or feelings or experiences or abilities never activated in the body is because we've been shamed for lifetime after lifetime. We've been taught to not be, to not use our power, to not talk about what's going on inside there. And so when we begin to open up, we heal that inner child, the body begins to change. I mean, literally change. And so whatever you can take from that, understand you're an astral traveler. You have the ability in this life to experience the same types of contacts, the same realms, even greater, more amazing things. And any of the people that you've read about, any of their accounts, any of their blogs, any of their podcasts, you yourself are the greatest experiencer in your human life. And I truly, truly pray that you guys believe it. Understand it amongst yourselves. There's a huge changing of the guard in this community with respect to who we have seen as the authorities and the experiencers and the whistleblowers and the ones that were meant to give us the information. If you haven't figured out, most of that's changed. Most of it was wrong. Most of it was filtered through ego barriers and distortions in our own processes and bodies. And what we find in fourth density is you're the experiencer. You're the shaman. You're the healer. You're the intuitive. It's your time. And if you're here, it's because you're part of that alliance. You chose to be part of this journey. And if there's one thing, once again, you can do is look in the mirror and realize it's always been us from the very beginning. So along with that, along with our friends at New Atlantis, along with this realm of non-physical beings consciously connecting with those of us here on Earth, we're going to be connecting with them consciously. So before we go there, let's just get through this stuff here. From this realm, we are now on a path to exist humans in reversing the timeline damage caused by the fall into transhumanism and separation from the divinity within ourselves. If you have received this message here today, it's because you have a part to play in this operation. Even if right now you don't know what it is, and you're like, but what are you talking about? I gotta go back to work in that office. I gotta go home and be mom. I gotta go back and do whatever it is, you know? Sure, when we come here to these conferences, we can experience a whole other vibe and a whole other feeling in ourselves. But if you are here, because eventually you're gonna leave, we're all gonna go back into our own realms and our own worlds. Remember that you made a choice to be here during this time. And so you can facilitate this process by purifying the body, healing the heart, and yes, reconnecting with that inner child. In fact, if there's one thing you can truly do, it's find that inner child, give them a big hug, and let yourself truly exist in that realm of imagination, which is what we're about to do. Consciously connecting with our soul guides, our family, all those that chose to connect with us here today. And so in preparation for the next chapter of your journey, our guides, guardians, ancestors, and galactic family have prepared a very special transmission of energy for each of you here today. So before we close, we're going to receive that energy. So I know we've been sitting here for a while. Good job, everyone. But see if you can settle in. We're going to take a few breaths. What we're going to be doing is creating a sound. One of the primary, or rather the primary frequency or technique that I use to send multidimensional energy at this stage of the work that I do is through a vocal vibration that I created. It is a technique and a modality that was given to me. I say given to me because I did not invent it. It was handed to me by a group of very, very large, tall, dark-skinned, shamanic African-looking beings that appeared to me in an out-of-body experience in 2017, actually on December 29th of 2017 to be exact. I experienced a random out-of-body experience in a psychic shop in Los Angeles, California, in which I just sat down in a chair and closed my eyes, and I was immediately taken to an outdoor realm, an outdoor space, on what looked like a planet with very dark brown and red earth underneath me. And standing in front of me were three very tall African-American men wearing some sort of shamanic garb. And they were coming towards me in a line. And as they walked toward me, they put their hands in front of me and created a wall with their hands all the way over my body. They split off and walked around. And when they faced me again, they walked up to me with their hand out and blew this powder in my face. Upon receiving that, I was taken into what looked like a dwelling space. It looked like a home or just some place that beings in this realm existed. And within that realm to my right on a table was what appeared to be a child of one of these beings. And that child had a very large swollen head. There was a large glowing crack on the side of his head. And I observed myself from outside of my body walk over to this child and hold my hand above his head. And upon doing so, my hand lifted up and a very large, glowing, well, let's be real, it looked like a slug. A very large, glowing, metallic-looking slug-like item came out of this child's head. I held it up and it instantly dissolved into some form of light. What I realized in that moment is that my body was making a sound. It was making a vibration and a tone. And after that experience, I began to create that sound organically in the healings and the sessions I would do. And in the beginning, it felt very vulnerable and it was very strange. And I would sit there with clients and start humming and making these tones. And I didn't know what I was doing. But what I found out later on was that that's one of the training wheels for sending and receiving non-physical, multidimensional energy. While we can all do it right now, the method by which we start sending that is through the human voice. And so I'm going to demonstrate to you what I begin to do in these clearings and in this process. And it's the thing I call scalar toning. So I'm going to give you guys a very quick frequency of that. And then we're going to be doing a very quick activation in which we're going to be creating your own frequency, your own soul's note, your own tone, your own wavelength. And so during this experience, upon moving the energy out of this being or this child's head, I remember holding my hand up to the ceiling and watching it dissolve. And this is basically what happened. It was gone. And so, that's a scalar frequency that the human body emits. It's capable of penetrating your organs from any distance, in any realm, across space or time. And it is a sentient living vibration that the human body has the ability to create. It encompasses a thought, an emotion, a frequency, an image, a phrase, a conversation, a color, a smell, a taste. It's our own multidimensional transmission system. And so we're going to do a little bit of an exercise here. And so if you guys are ready, just kind of settle in. We're going to be creating 3 tones. This is an activation of 3 places on your body. I'll tell you where the first one is. It's right here in your head. It's known as your upper dantian. It's one of the 3 primary 4th density energy centers in the body. Because we do have a different energy body in 4th density. It's more tightly concentrated, more tightly formed. A lot of the intricacy of the chakras in the body begin to compress into 3 primary energy centers. And so we have the upper dantian, the middle dantian, and the lower dantian. And so we're going to do 3 tones and activate those areas. Everybody, if you can, close your eyes. I know we've been in this room for a while today. It's nice and steamy and strange here in Florida. We've come from corners of the world all over, and we're going to start by taking some gentle, deep breaths all the way down in your belly like there's a balloon or a basketball, and you're just real gently, real slowly, and a little bit exaggeratedly puffing yourself up. And as you exhale, you just really let that breath go all the way down. Acknowledge you're in a group with people, breathing, connecting, feeling yourself, hearing the breath of the other multidimensional travelers in this room, feeling your expectations, your dreams, your desires. Everyone came here for a specific reason, even if you didn't know what it was. Something drew you here, a passion, a call, an emotion. We honor that emotion within us, And the next few moments, I'll count from 3 to 1, and we'll take a deep breath in as one group, one unit, one organism, one body. In 3, 2, 1. Deep breath in. Hold it. And release. There you go. Let that breath out, kind of like a steam valve. All the way down. Good job, guys. That's your vagus nerve activating. Let's do one more of those. Big breath in. 3, 2, 1. Hold it. And release. Some of you guys are feeling your energy begin to shift. You're feeling those thought forms rise up in your body. Let's do one more of those big breaths. One body, one unit. 3, 2, 1. And release. Very good. Before we create this vibration in the body, I ask you to find those desires, find your wishes, find the events, find the understandings and those experiences you've been wishing for in your body, that you've been praying for, that you've been trying to create, that you've been waking up every morning praying, is this the day? Is this the time? Is this the moment in my journey in which it begins? Find that emotion, whatever it is, especially those things so dear to you that you dare not say it aloud to another living person. Find that energy within you. When I count from 3 to 1, we're going to take a deep breath in and allow your body to vibrate. Make a sound. It's not a song. It's not an arpeggio. It's a true tone, your true frequency. We honor all those of you assisting us in the multidimensional realms in the name of the one infinite creator. Deep breath in. Deep breath in and watch how it changes on the second. Take one more breath in and watch. This is your true note, your true frequency. Feel your emotions, feel your body, feel those people in the room. We came here for this time. Deep breath in. Gentle breath in. Acknowledge those emotions. Acknowledge the feelings. Acknowledge the energy and the thought forms inside your body. Thank yourselves for being here. Congratulate yourselves. And when you're ready, let's open our eyes. Good job, guys. But you're not done yet. Now that we've attuned ourselves to the frequency of scalar toning, we will now experience a complete and utter clearing of this entire facility, this entire place, and probably the land from a couple separate miles radius all around us. And so what we're going to be doing now that we've just attuned our energy, I'd like every single person in this room, please stand up. We are going to truly activate ourselves on a whole other level. I know we've been doing a lot here today, but I'm not going to let you guys leave here without truly activating your energy and getting to feel the sentient frequency in your bodies. Like I said, a few years ago, one of the most important experiences I ever had was with these beings that showed up in my path, and they gave us a new modality. They gave me a new frequency. They taught me how to begin to use my voice and project energy from outside of the human body on an absolutely unprecedented level. And so before we leave, we are going to explode this energy outward to each and every living thing within this city, within this town, and Lord, I pray within this entire realm. So I'm going to demonstrate to you a very powerful energy explosion process that will allow you to clear an entire space. And so one of the experiences I had with these beings after they attuned me and gave me this process of releasing energy from the body is I was standing out in that yard and they all came up to me and they were doing this sort of dance, which I could probably show you guys today, but it would be it would be a little bit embarrassing. But in the course of that, they blasted 3 orbs into my body. And upon those orbs entering my body, I noticed them kind of move around what I believe to be DNA strands. But a very curious thing happened afterneath, and after that. And we're going to demonstrate that here for you today. I'm going to put the mic down because I don't want to blow out anybody's energy. But what they showed us is that we have an ability to truly open our energy on an unprecedented level. And so what we're going to do is create a sound explosion. I'm going to demonstrate it for you guys one time, and then we're going to do it together. The first thing I want you to see is this process. Stamping your feet. Start stamping your feet back and forth. We're clearing our energy, you're grounding your Earth Star chakra. And so here's how it goes. I'll demonstrate it for you. Now, ready? Here we go. Hands back, behind your back. We do 2 steps and then we explode. It's from your diaphragm and it's the biggest explosion of sound you have ever created in your entire life. Believe in yourselves. This is your multidimensional activation. You came to these conferences, you came to this body, and you came to this realm to be something more. This is your time. This is your experience. Spread your legs apart, shoulder width. We're going to go 1, 2, we do it 3 times in a row. Believe in yourself, guys. This is it. Here we go. Thank you. Feel your heart, feel your breath, feel your lungs, feel your face, feel the emotion in your body. And when you look around in this room, understand this is what we came here for, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for incarnating at this time in history. I mean this very sincerely. And guess what? You survived this crazy long presentation. And so wherever you go next in this world, please remember that if you take anything from this process, let it be an understanding that you are truly more than this crazy flesh and blood meat suits. Inside each of us exists true magic, the magic of our infinite selves. And it is your choice to receive this knowledge, this understanding, this ability, this consciousness during this life. My prayer is this energy finds each of you in your own way. Never forget, we truly chose this. I want to thank you guys for being here. Please join our upcoming tarot course. It's starting on March 28th. One of the best ways to unlock your psychic abilities. And you can find me on Patreon. And if anyone's capable of reading that sentence at the bottom of the screen, then some of you will know what you need to do. I love you guys. My name is Matthew Rand Morney, and I thank you for being a part of this journey. As you know, I'm one of those beings who is right down here on the ground with you. I'm not up on the stage. I'm not elevated. I am not propped up or funded by any agencies or any people. I'm 100% independent and operating for this collective. This is literally what I do. So when you guys support me, you are literally supporting this mission and what we're trying to help everyone figure out on Earth. So thank you for being here. I love you guys. We're going to do a Skywatch tomorrow, Saturday night. Yeah. I love you.
Man, that was awesome. I felt like a Samoan, like... I'm just gonna start doing that now, like in the grocery store. I need a little energy. So we have, I told you it stinks being in front of the projector, looking into your soul. We have a break now for those of going to the cocktail. That's at 5 o'clock in the Seed grapes. Mind grapes, whatever. Which is through the elevators, go north and okay. And then after that, we come back here for John Vivanco, and then we'll have Skywatch.
Let's eat.